Hello there and welcome to Marketing Camp. One way of classifying goods and services is based on how customers evaluate or judge them. And on this basis, you have three types of goods. You have search goods and services, experience goods and services, and credence goods and services. In short, this is called the SEC classification of goods and services. These three different goods are judged in different ways based on the nature of the products. So the first types of goods are search goods and services. These are goods and services that can be judged before they are consumed. This is because they're quite basic in nature, you could say. So for example, stationery. These tend to be search goods, which a customer can judge before they actually consume them. So for example, if you want a pen, you'd merely have to state what color ink you want. So if you want a ballpoint pen with blue ink, you state that and you purchase it. You're not going to have to use the pen before you purchase it. You sort of know what you're going to get beforehand. Same thing with like staples. You don't have to test out the staples first. You just want staples of a particular size. You purchase them and you're comfortable. You don't feel the risk of dissatisfaction. You don't feel like you're going to waste money or they're not going to work. You can trust that the product will work. Same thing with hardware. So if you want things like screws, nuts, and bolts, you just mention the size and you get them. You don't have to first test them out. And on the other hand, you have experience goods. These are goods and services that cannot be judged until a customer actually consumes them. This is because there's the risk of dissatisfaction. So, for example, restaurants are experience goods. If you're in the middle of a town which you've never been to before and the restaurants which you've never been to before, you can't judge whether that restaurant is good or bad before you actually visit the restaurant and purchase the food. So you'd have to first taste the food to be able to determine whether it tastes good or it tastes bad, and whether the experience is good or bad. So you first have to purchase and consume these goods and services in order for you to determine whether you like them or you don't like them. Another example is with the hospitality industry. Suppose you're going on a vacation to a particular resort. You can't determine whether this resort you're going to is going to be good or bad until you actually visit the resort, check out the amenities, and see the different activities that they have. Then after you've actually lived there for some time is when you'll be able to tell whether it's good or bad, whether you like it or do not like it. However, to minimize the risk of potential dissatisfaction from experience goods, you could look at reviews beforehand to see if other people enjoyed these goods and services. So if other people went to a restaurant and they liked the food, you could use their opinion, their review, to form your own opinion. It's not going to completely eliminate the chance of you not liking the food at the restaurant, but you will feel safer spending money at this restaurant because other people have said that their food tastes good. Unlike a place which has no reviews at all, you're not so sure, okay, am I going to like the food? Am I just going to spend money not like the food? Then I've wasted money and I'm dissatisfied. Same thing with hotels. You go to a place and you don't know if you're going to like it or not, but since you don't have any other option, you have to live somewhere. You pay for the hotel room, then you don't quite like the experience, you don't like the customer service, you don't like their dining options, and things like that. On the other hand, you have credence goods and services. These are goods and services that are difficult to judge even after consumption. So it's important to look at the meaning of the word credence. Credence is a ready acceptance of something as true. This is important because credence goods are goods which essentially a customer accepts them readily because they don't have any expertise in that domain. Usually, credence goods and services are services particularly and not hard products. So you have things like healthcare, whereby if you go to a doctor because you're sick, you're not so sure if the doctor has done a good or a bad job. Of course, you're going to want to be healed, you're going to want to get better, but you cannot tell if the doctor did a good or a bad job because you don't have any medical experience yourself. You did not go to medical school. So the doctor may have given you more medicine than you need. Maybe they didn't do the right tests, but you wouldn't know that because you don't have that medical experience. Same thing with legal services. Since you're not a lawyer yourself, you don't have any legal training, you're not going to know whether your lawyer has indeed done a good job or a bad job. You have an outcome that you want. For example, you don't want to go to jail, but you end up going to jail. That may not be because your lawyer is a bad lawyer. It's maybe because your crime was so heinous that there's really no way for you to not go to jail for what you did. Same thing with healthcare. You may want to be cured. Suppose you have cancer. It's quite difficult to treat cancer. At the time of recording this video, I believe there's no cure for cancer. So no matter what the expertise of your doctor are, they may not be able to cure you of cancer. So with Credence Goods, there's that risk of being taken advantage of, which could be in the form of being overcharged. And in order to evaluate Credence Goods, which is very difficult, but one way of going about it is through second opinions. So if you go to a doctor and you don't quite trust their diagnosis, you don't quite trust the process, you could go to another doctor to hear their diagnosis and their expertise. Then you could compare and contrast. But ultimately, you still require another professional's expertise because you cannot do it on your own. So ultimately, the differences between Search Goods, Experience Goods, and Credence Goods are threefold. You have the expertise required, you have experience and risk. With Search Goods, you require pretty little expertise because you can evaluate the product beforehand. They're like basic things, like if you want a bottle, you could just say, I want a bottle of a capacity of 1 liter, and you get it. However, with Credence Goods, you're going to need certain expertise to evaluate that particular product or service. And with Experience Goods, you will not need much expertise, but you will need to have first experienced that product or service in order for you to know whether it is indeed good or bad. And then comes the risks involved. With Search Goods, there's little to no risk because you can evaluate beforehand. There's no risk of you losing money or being dissatisfied because you can tell before you make a purchase whether you like it or don't like it. With Experience Goods, there's that risk of dissatisfaction, that risk of wasting money, because in order for you to identify whether it's a good or a bad product, whether you like it or dislike it, you have to first purchase it. You have to first experience it. And then with Credence Goods, there's the risk of being taken advantage of because you have to first experience something, and even once you've experienced it, you don't know whether they did a good or a bad job because you lack the necessary knowledge to make an evaluation. So a service provider could take advantage of you. They could exploit that lack of knowledge and charge you more than they need to. They could hassle you to do more processes than necessary. So ultimately, those are the differences between Search Goods, Experience Goods, and Credence Goods. Deal with that as you will.